This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Batman needs a team that can operate on the sly. You will be that team. I will deploy on missions.
Real missions?
Yes, but covert. You'll do it on league terms.
What are we waiting for?
This team is not a social club.
Young Justice.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 169 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal, and with me, my good friend, good brother, and the gentleman that runs our Twitter account. That is right, it's Liam. Liam, it is episode 169 of the DCAU Review.
Nice. That's right. We are tackling one more Saturday here in the month of July, and as we often do when there is a fifth Saturday in a month, rather than do another regular DCAU review, we instead look to the multiverse and an Elseworlds tale. And in this case, we've arrived back in the early days, the first season of Young Justice.
That is right. And Liam, we actually covered Young Justice a while ago, probably a little over a year ago, maybe, in one of our Elseworlds months, and had a fun time with it. We sort of alluded to it last week when we announced that we were going to be covering that this week. And the episode we are covering, as you mentioned, is Schooled, and is still in the first season. Our previous review, we covered technically, which is the first two episodes of the series, which was originally presented, I think, as a single episode movie experience or something like that. So this technically is the third episode that we've covered, but it depends if you want to count the first episode as two episodes or a single episode. So we'll let you at home decide whether or not this is the third or second episode that we're covering respectively. But we have lots to talk about. We know that this is a pretty popular show in the DC animated well, it's not the DC animated universe. It's in DC animation, I guess. And the extended
DC animated multiverse.
I like that. I think we can.
Anyone done DCAM yet?
Yeah, I like that. The DCAM. Yeah. Rolls right off the tongue. So yes, in the DC animated multiverse here, it's quite a popular show. I think it has quite the cult following, if you will, and certainly has a lot of passionate people that appreciated it. It was sort of kind of cut down in its prime also, in that I know that a lot of people were left unsatisfied, and the fact that it was sort of prematurely canceled off and not really given a proper send-off on Cartoon Network. However, I believe there's been long-standing rumors that through the HBO Max app, they're going to be continuing an additional season after the additional season that they had just released, I guess not too long ago on the DC streaming app.
Yeah, that's right. I believe it is in production currently. Now, what in production means in the process of animation could be 6 months from now. It could be 2 years from now. You know, there's obviously a lot that goes into that. So not quite sure when or where we will see or hear from this team of youngsters yet again anytime soon. But yes, in the meantime, the first three seasons are available on HBO Max. Not a commercial, but again, we're open. We
would shill the heck out of this with no shame, should the right amount of money come our way. So if anybody's listening at HBO Max, it's a wonderful streaming service.
It sure is.
That's right. So definitely check out in the archives. You can check out our review of the previous episodes if you're interested. But just a brief episode synopsis that we'll have here. Speaking of sponsors, Liam, an unsponsored segment featuring our official Internet Movie Database summary for this week's episode, which originally aired back on the Cartoon Network. At least I assume it was back on February the 4th, 2011, meaning that, believe it or not, we just passed the 10-year anniversary of this episode debuting, Liam.
That's right. And so this synopsis is for the episode Schooled, which is written by Nicole Dubuc, directed by Michael Chang, with music by the Dynamic Music Partners and animation by M.O.I. Animation. And that synopsis reads as such. Young Justice is assigned transport duty to deliver parts of an android that has duplicated the powers of several Justice Leaguers, and the creator of the android wants him back.
Well, there you go. It's a fair one. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's it's long and short of it. I mean, that's the action of the episode. The emotional through line of our episode is Superboy feeling alone and isolated and angry, and Superman being a deadbeat dad.
Yeah, if once we covered that original episode, by the way, episode 130, if you're looking for it in the archives, go back and check that one out if you are interested. But we learned in that episode, and we have our players on the team of Young Justice who are at this point are made up of Robin, we have Kid Flash, we have Aqualad, we have Miss Martian, and we have Superboy. Speedy was originally a part of the team, but has since he quit at the beginning of the first episode, and other potential members that come later on have not yet joined. But so at this point, this is our crew of Young Justice. And if we recall, Superboy was sort of an experiment that we found out, was sort of an underground experiment that at the end of the initial episode, spoiler alert, they realized, was this clone of Superman. And and he sort of has this interaction as Superman sees him for the very first time in that episode, where Superman looks at him and he sort of tries to make this connection with him, kind of using only his eyes, like looking at him, and Superman very quickly turns away, and I think maybe even flies away. So it sort of continues that thread for this episode, where the opening scene we see just outside of Wayne Towers. There's a bridge which we assume is in Gotham, and there's an accident.
I think the little thing at the beginning actually says Metropolis.
Oh, okay. All right, I missed that. Then you're probably right.
This could be one of the versions where like they're next door to each other, though. So
either way,
the bridge could be connecting the two cities.
It actually makes a little more sense why Superman would be there then. It's like, why is he in Gotham City? You're right. It's in Metropolis. So this accident occurs. Bruce Wayne is in this Wayne Tower, where it is, whether it's in the other side of the bridge is Gotham or whether it's in Metropolis. He's overlooking this accident occurring. And he's about to break into action and put on his Batman suit when he happens to notice that Superman has arrived on the scene. But shortly thereafter, as a bus sort of almost in a typical superhero cliche, a bus full of children is hanging over the side of the bridge. Arriving on the scene shortly thereafter is the Boy of Steel, or Superboy himself. And as he lands, he doesn't land with quite the soft touch that Superman did, and he sort of shakes the bridge a little bit, and the bus starts to fall off the edge of the bridge, and he's sort of pulling on it with all of his might. And I think part of the storyline, I don't know if it's established in the episodes in between this, but he's not quite up to snuff, it seems, when it comes to his powers equaling Superman's. He's a little bit weaker, doesn't seem to be able to completely fly all the way. So it may have something to do with the fact that he also can't just he can't land softly because his powers are still developing. But as he sort of is struggling to pull this bus back over the edge of the bridge, Superman interrupts, happens to lift the bus way over his head, and let's just say that Superboy is none too pleased.
I had that. I didn't want to take the chance. As it is, your landing could have destabilized the entire bridge. It didn't, but it could have. We don't yet know the limits of your powers. Well, maybe you could, help me figure that out. Batman's got that covered. Yeah, I know, but... Superman. Wait, Arrow, slow down. What's attacking? No, I'm definitely available. Coordinates. Acknowledged. On my way. Sorry, Superboy. Duty calls. Already got the alert, Bruce.
I know, Clark. But we need to talk.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun first scene, and we'll certainly have a lot to talk about in visuals in this episode in a little bit here. But yeah, the scene is Superboy's trying to lift the bus, and Superman sort of comes up and pushes it back onto the bridge, and they have a little bit of a disagreement about whether or not Superboy could have handled that, and Superman mentions that we don't really know what the scope of your powers are. You need to be more careful, and Superboy asks him to help him learn how to control his powers, and Superman brushes him off, tells him that's what Black Canary and the rest, and Batman and the rest of this the adults in charge of the Young Justice team are for, and then he gets a call from Green Arrow and sort of gets called away. And of course, Bruce Wayne in Wayne Tower has been watching all of this and lets Superman know that they need to have a talk a little bit later. And from there, we cut to the Justice Mountain, the Young Justice headquarters, where they're preparing to train with Black Canary. And there's actually, I think, a nice little bit of like salt in the wound where Martian Manhunter happens to be there with Black Canary, and is being very affectionate and nice and kind to his niece in Miss Martian, and you can tell that's just making the day even worse for Superboy.
Hi, Superboy. How is Metropolis? Ready for training, everyone? Black Canary, Uncle Sean.
McGann, I was in the neighborhood, so I thought I'd see how you were adjusting.
A few bumps, but I'm learning.
That's all I can ask.
Stick around. Class is in session.
Yeah, Superboy continues to recognize and sulk. And it's at this moment that, of course, wouldn't you know it, Black Canary, after sort of retelling this recognizing that the team looks to be a little bit down, she decides that now is the time to start training, and Kid Flash is all but too eager to step up to the plate because he's a little horn dog. I guess that's the only way to properly describe it. He's a little too excited, a little too eager to get potentially get his hands on Black Canary, who quickly disperses with him and makes him look a bit like a fool in their training session. And Superboy is pretty skeptical at this point. His anger clearly still ringing, not happy about how things went in Metropolis, and feels it's going to be all too easy and to take care of Black Canary. And she quickly shows him, and he quickly realizes that it's not as easy as he thought it would be. And she kind of makes him look foolish, which on multiple occasions, which causes the other leaguers, including Robin, to laugh at him, which just seems to make him even more angry. And at this point, Superboy has escalated to the point where he's about to do something he might regret. And wouldn't you know it, Batman interrupts to let them know that the Justice League recently had an interesting interaction with an android that seemed to be able to replicate their powers. This sounds a little familiar here. Just by interacting with them, he was able to replicate their powers and continue to get stronger. And they actually had to physically separate the parts of the android in order to defeat it. there is speculation that it could be one Dr. Ivo who is behind the creation of said robot. Apparently a well-known enough scientist amongst not only the Leaguers but the Young Justice as well. Even though they believe that he is no longer living, they continue to speculate that he might indeed be behind it. So the Justice League hatches this plan in order to properly, hopefully, observe and sort of do some digging into the android himself, some observation, and they're gonna take the parts of the android to two various star labs, one in Boston and one in New York, which is interesting because we then get a map and it shows that Gotham City is placed directly between Boston and New York. So in this universe, at least, New York exists and Gotham doesn't supplant New York City for that city, so it lies somewhere in between there. But they're going to take these trucks in opposite directions, and he decides that he's going to task the Young Justice with escorting each of the Star Labs trucks to their respective cities.
Yeah, we get a pretty fun sequence, which again we'll definitely talk more about in visuals, where the two teams are escorting their respective trucks, and wouldn't you know it, tale as old time, as we like to say on the show, a bunch of green robot monkeys show up to attack the trucks. I believe you mean mobile optimal neural quotient infiltrators. Yes, correct. Which I do. That might be my favorite line in the whole episode. Later is when Dr. Ivo talks about how hard he had to work to come up with an acronym that worked for that would spell out monkey.
Oh, hello.
You're Ivo? I'm whelmed.
You're one to talk. Now, since when does the big blue boy scout have a brat?
He doesn't.
Yeah, if you say so. Have you met my mobile optimal neural quotient infiltrators? And after all the trouble I went through finding an acronym for monkey.
Access, Captain Adam.
That's quite a bit of fun there. We have robot monkeys that are both attacking the truck, and then as our young heroes try to intervene, also attack them. There's some really fun sequences there that we'll definitely talk about more in visuals. But the end result is, as we have seen throughout the episode, Superboy doesn't feel like he needs any help, doesn't feel like he needs anything other than his brute force. And so he not only jumps off of his motorcycle to go attack these monkeys and try to stop it himself, he also inadvertently wrecks Robin's motorcycle as well. So they're really hammering home just how kind of out of control and angry he is. And unfortunately, Superboy is unable to stop them for the monkeys from getting the parts, but he does give chase towards them and kind of leaves Robin in the dust. And meanwhile, Miss Martian and Kid Flash and Aqualad also are unable to stop the monkeys from taking their parts. So they decide to have Kid Flash meet up with Robin as they go towards as we sort of begin to arrive at our final battle. Superboy chases the monkeys to this moving train heading towards Gotham City, as you mentioned, and as he arrives there, we actually get our first look at Dr. Ivo, and he's able to repair Amazo, and then the fight is on, and it's very quickly established that, quite obviously, a robot with all of the powers of the Justice League is a little bit more formidable than Superboy, especially on his own.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal scene that takes place there in the moving train, and it's interesting because this version of Amazo, he verbally has to call upon the different powers of the heroes that he's taken. So it's access. He proceeds with access and then fill in the name superheroes. So we get a lot of dialogue from him, but it's all just accessing various powers as he uses Captain Adam's powers, Superman's. We get some Red Tornado, Black Canary, Martian Manhunter, the Flash. Really all of the superheroes that you could think of that would be whose powers he could have possibly interacted with in the short time that he did. So very quickly from there, as they're on this moving train, Superboy is overwhelmed and punched, basically using Superman's powers. Amazo launches him far off the train, and Dr. Ivo decides at this point it's time for Amazo to finish him off. So Superboy actually lands inside of Robin's high school, and Robin and Kid Flash, who had broken away from their truck and had kind of deduced based on Robin hacks into one of the monkeys they defeated to determine just where the parts were headed. So he's tracking Amazo at that point. He's able to use the GPS to determine where Amazo's pinpoint location is, and they pinpoint him sort of as they're headed towards Gotham and see that he's landed in Robin's school. So the fight continues as Amazo continues to pound Superboy into submission almost, and then the ultimate climax of the episode is going to occur in the gym as Amazo and Dr. Ivo happens to be there and waiting for Superboy with a few of his monkeys, and they sit there and sort of observe, and he determines at that point that he wants Amazo to finish him off and commands him to do so. And despite all of his anger and all of his might, Superboy is, again, no match for Amazo. Robin and Kid Flash arrive shortly thereafter, and they themselves attempt their best to team up, and they're having almost no luck at all. And then one blow that sends Superboy into the bleachers. He sort of has this callback to his interaction with the Black Canary, and he decides that he's going to change his strategy. Instead of just trying to use his might to punch Amazo, he's going to start threatening Professor Ivo, which will then cause Amazo's attention to be diverted a little bit, which allows Robin and Kid Flash to also try and capture some of Amazo's attention. And at some point, he can't move fast enough, changing between his powers. And when he attempts to change powers back from Martian Manhunter to Superman in order to attack Superboy, Superboy stops with his fist right where his head would be and sort of literally puts his hand through the middle of Amazo's head. So that is sort of the end of it for this episode for Amazo.
Yeah, we get a little bit of wrap up there as Superboy learns a lesson, which is obviously sort of illustrated in what Black Canary tells him earlier in the episode. It's not just about your physical strength, it's about your technique. It's about being able to use your opponent's weaknesses against them and things like that. And you kind of have a little bit of an epilogue there as they're discussing it, and Batman is sort of not chastising the team, but is talking to them about how they should have called in backup at some point, and that teamwork is important, and that it's okay to call for help. That's the whole point of having a Justice League, is if something like that were to happen again. But
the Amazo android is in pieces again, safely being analyzed at the 2 separate Star labs. But Ivo escaped, and since he originated the tech, he's arguably more dangerous than the android.
Capturing the professor will be a League priority.
But we understand your mission encountered other complications.
Complications come with the job. Your ability to handle them has impressed the League.
The whole League?
Given time, yes. Kryptonians, as you know, have very hard heads. Of course, there's no shame in asking for help. That's why the League exists, because there are some problems even we can't handle individually.
Please, if we needed help, we'd never get the chance to ask. Look familiar? You were following us, babysitting. You still don't trust us.
We didn't follow you.
And that's not your arrow. But that means Speedy.
He has our backs.
They make mention that they're sort of proud and impressed by what the team was able to do, and Batman lets Superboy know that he thinks Superman will come around before too long. And Superboy lets Black Canary know that he is ready, in fact, to learn a little bit more and to start training more regularly with her. And that's kind of where we end the episode.
Yeah, I think there's two things that we missed. Two things that we failed to mention. One, in that final battle scene in the gym, there is a mysterious arrow that gets launched in the middle of the battle. It sort of comes out of nowhere. It actually misses everybody, almost hits Robin, and they're sort of puzzled by it. But then it comes up later on in that discussion as the Young Justice is sort of confronted by the Justice League about asking for help. And the Young Justice is pretty miffed. They think that the Justice Leaguers were sort of just standing by, watching over their shoulder. And Green Arrow pulls out his arrow to compare it to that arrow to show Robin or Kid Flash that it was not, in fact, his arrow. So there's some mystery as to who was. The Young Justice members believe that it could be Speedy watching over them, but I have a feeling it actually belongs to somebody else. So there's a little mystery around that. And there's actually a scene where you mentioned that Superman's role in this episode and really in the series thus far is sort of the role of deadbeat dad, and that he's sort of very reluctant to interact, to even recognize or acknowledge Superboy sort of existing. So this conversation that Bruce alludes to at the beginning of the episode needing to have with Clark, he eventually does. They sit down in a diner, and he sort of has a come to Jesus talk with him where he says, hey, he's not going away. He exists. I think you need to really embrace him. And he even says, he needs his father.
Apple pie.
The devil's food.
Something tells me this isn't about dessert.
The boy needs you.
No, he needs you. He needs Red. I'm just a constant reminder of what he's not.
Sorry, Clark, but you're dead wrong. Look, I know he troubles you, but he's here. You have to get over the how and why. Trust me on this. This boy needs his father.
I'm not his father. I'll take that pie to go.
And that was definitely the wrong thing to say to Clark, because he decides at that point that he's going to take his apple pie to go.
Yes, that is the one thing we forgot to talk about there. Is yes, we're sort of laying the groundwork that while Superboy isn't necessarily finding the mentorship, the companionship, the friendship from who would seem to be the obvious mentor for him in Superman, that he's sort of finding it among his friends in the team as well as other potential mentors like Black Canary. So it does create that sort of interesting final scene, as you mentioned, where Batman mentions that we're all pretty impressed with you, and Superboy says everybody, and Batman's like, well maybe not him, but he'll come around someday. And you sort of just continue to build those have those building blocks for the rest of the series going forward here, with Superboy's sort of continued quests to gain that acceptance, and also, as you mentioned, the sort of mystery Archer who has been helping the team out.
Yeah, so lots of stuff to unpack here and discuss, Liam, as I guess we can begin to now that we've kind of done the whole plot run through, we can kind of talk about what our thoughts on it are. I think as an episode, and again, I don't have a lot of nostalgic feelings for this series. I didn't watch it when it came on originally. I think we talked about it when we reviewed it on episode 130, that, this is sort of a whole new experience for me, and I'm coming into it with sort of an open mind. There are things about it that I am interested in. I am interested in the fact that there are so many hardcore fans that love this series, which usually it can be a good sign, can also be, it lead you to go, I'm not quite sure why people like this sometimes, so coming in with an open mind is important. And I think thus far, what I have seen of this episode, just by the plot itself, I think there's a lot here that when you look at this as a quote unquote children's cartoon, or a cartoon that was geared to older children, but it's still a children's cartoon. I think there are a lot of the things that we like and appreciate in the standard DCAU elements that I can appreciate in this. Storylines that speak on multiple levels. So you have this whole Superboy feeling fatherless, not feeling like an outsider, feeling rejected, feeling unloved. Superman literally being his DNA relative, but wanting nothing to do with him for no fault of his own. It's that sort of is a classic storytelling technique of, the father who, leaves his kids or has an illegitimate son, but doesn't want to recognize or pour into him once he finds out that it's actually his son. That's an effective storytelling technique, because you can really empathize with that character. We all want to know our dads. We all want to be loved by our dads. We all want to find people to connect with, and being a Kryptonian is one thing, but then being a clone of a Kryptonian is almost its own separate space to live in. So dying to connect with somebody and to be able to just kind of have those connected points when you're already this very unique species anyway is hard enough. So to empathize with that character of Superboy and really not understand why Superman is so hesitant or jerkish, I would say there, it is definitely an interesting storytelling technique. I think that this story specifically of the overconfident, cocky superhero doesn't want to listen to the superhero that doesn't have powers, or the underpowered superhero in this case with Black Canary, and then ultimately has to recognize his folly and sort of bend the knee and humble himself and recognize that, oh yeah, that's right, maybe she was correct. That's not a unique thing either, but I think in this storytelling, the way that Superboy kind of realizes that all the rage in the world doesn't help him, it goes along with the idea of this is young members of this young justice, and they have to kind of come to terms with the realization that power and might isn't going to solve every single problem. So using your brain and figuring things out, using your cognitive abilities is certainly a part of what you have to do also as a hero. I think that's interesting too. But with that, I also think that I find I could not find one character to root for on this episode.
Yeah, so I will say, I think they're definitely playing on both Superman's fear of taking on the responsibility of a child or young adult in this case, as well as, and Batman mentions this, that we don't really know where they got Superman's DNA at this point. So to a certain extent, I think the idea is he sort of feels violated by Superboy's presence. And so he really doesn't know. And again, that's not Superboy's fault, but so it's this weird situation where he's both sort of afraid and a little bit maybe hurt or confused by just the presence of this kid in his life, and is sort of choosing, rather than facing it head on as he should, he's sort of choosing to skirt that responsibility, either by putting it on to Batman and Black Canary, or by sort of just burying himself in the superhero work and looking for any reason he can think of to break off the conversation as soon as possible. So yeah, that being said, to talk about what you mentioned about not having a lot of people to root for, everyone in this show, in this episode at least, is profoundly unlikable to me. Superman, for all the reasons we just mentioned, yes, there's a little bit of layers to why he is feeling that way, but generally it's Superman. And I guess I'm showing my old-fashioned fanboy cred here, but like, that's, to me, it doesn't feel authentically Superman that he would just throw this kid, leave the basket on the doorstep of the monastery and say it's your problem now. Like, it just doesn't feel like that's something Superman would do. But again, this show is more about the kids, so Superboy is kind of just an angry jerk throughout most of this episode. And again, they're trying to tell a story that this is him just having a bad reaction to not finding that sense of community, not finding that sense of mentorship, and then thinking that perhaps only Superman can be the one because he has powers like him. He's the only person that he can connect with, whereas he has all of these friends around him. He has Black Canary, he has Red Tornado, he has Batman. Like, there are other people that he could connect with and learn from, but he's so single-minded and focused on this non-relationship with Superman that he's just mean and a jerk to everyone, including Black Canary, including Robin, including the rest of his team, especially Miss Martian, who's just being very nice and just wants to help him, and he just keeps blowing her off. He's not very likable. I don't, and this might be a little bit controversial because I know this is a thing, one of these like weird, quirky things that people love about the show. But Robin on this show and his weird like wordplay things where he's like, it's like observational Jerry Seinfeld stuff where he's like, why isn't anyone ever just whelmed? They're overwhelmed, they're underwhelmed, nobody's ever just whelmed. Or this one, it's a disaster.
If dislike is the opposite of like, is disaster the opposite of aster? See, instead of things going wrong, they go right. Clearly you're not feeling the aster. What's wrong?
Canary. I mean, what business does she have teaching combat skills to a guy with super strength?
Taking down stronger guys is part of the gig. Canary learned that the hard way. Same with Batman and, well, me.
Like, he's like, whoa, what's an aster? Disaster is the bad one. If it goes well, is that just an aster? No, it's a different word, you dummy. Like, I don't like this version of Robin. I don't enjoy him. I don't get it. That being said, I just like to always throw in this disclaimer. I am not attacking you. If you like it, dear listener, you're allowed to like it. And I understand why this would be likable to some people because it is very quirky and weird. It's just like, I was just like, why is Robin doing Seinfeld bits in the middle of like a mission where they're fighting robot monkeys? Like, that is silly and absurd enough. You don't have to throw in whatever that is with Robin. So most of the main characters in this episode, I did not particularly think came off as likable. So, and the other members of the team, Kid Flash, Miss Martian, and Aqualad, are largely sidelined from the episode, other than you mentioned Kid Flash being a horny creep at the start. So that's another one in the dislike category for this week. Miss Martian and Aqualad don't get a ton to do. So the characters that they focused on this week, I just found them mostly very unlikable.
That's I think that's fair. I think it's a fair assessment. I think that there's not a lot to appreciate or enjoy. I think when Robin ultimately, I totally love and I'm laughing at your complaint about it. I wasn't offended by his, but it's totally absolutely 100% Seinfeld material. That's the perfect way to put that. So I love that. But to me, he was the only character in this episode too that had any semblance of like, hey, by the way, we have like brains, and like as they're pursuing the monkeys, he's like, hey, Superboy, your bike can turn into like a flying drone and also still remain a motorcycle. Turn it into battle mode. And Superboy's like, no. It's like, oh, yep. Okay, all right. Well, Superboy just doesn't have a brain. I get it. That's fine. And then Robin's the only one who figures out that you can hack and puts two together and hack the monkeys and figure out where things are going. And it's there's almost no likable characters, at least for this week's episode. I felt disappointed that we only get a little bit of comedy out of Miss Martian and Aqualad, and hopefully if we review more of these episodes in the future, we get a little bit more of both of those characters to flesh out both of them, because I feel like they were a little bit underwhelming, not overwhelming or just whelming, just underwhelmed for this one, Lamb. With that said, though, I think the plot, looking at the plot by itself and the things that I pointed out before, speaking of the father-son dynamic, him having to look to the other leaguers to potentially fill in for that role, being disappointed, recognizing that there are other people that he can learn from, sort of coming to terms with whatever Superman's reluctance is, and sort of still continuing to step into that hero role. As well as the idea of, I like Amazo. Amazo's a great foil for the Justice League. A unique way to figure out how they were going to defeat him. I appreciated that. I think this version of Amazo was pretty fun. So all those reasons, I ended up settling on a 7 out of 10 for plot.
Yeah, I came to a pretty similar score. I had a 6 out of 10. I like it, like I said, and I think big picture stuff of Superboy is angry and out of control, doesn't think he needs anybody, doesn't think he needs to learn any sort of technique or really anything besides his brute strength. And he learns not only to work with Robin and Kid Flash in this episode, but also to outsmart his opponent. So I do think there's this. It's a good, simple story in that way of him starting out at point A, and by the time we get to point B at the end, he has learned a lesson and he's a little bit of a different character than he was at the start. So I give them points for that, even if I found him pretty unlikable during the journey.
For sure. All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category. That will be visuals and animation for this week's episode. So of course we are dealing with a different style of animation, certainly more akin to the extended DC direct-to-video movie universe, a little bit more Eastern animation influenced. We definitely talked and broke that down in long detail back on that original episode that we covered. So go back and check that out if you're interested in hearing our big picture thoughts on that style of animation. But Liam, as we continue for this week, I think for me, the visuals for this episode were the standout and were very impressive. I think there's a lot to love for this week's episode. How did you feel about visuals and animation?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really great action beats throughout this episode. Right at the start, as we mentioned, the bridge is starting to collapse. Cars are crashing. The bus is hanging over the side, and we get this shot of Superman sort of slowly flying in. Well, actually, we get a nice little nod. There's some fun little Easter eggs in this episode, and it starts with as the bridge is collapsing and things seem to be pretty dire. We see Bruce Wayne in his office open up a statue of or a bust of William Shakespeare to reveal a red switch, which he presses, and that opens up a secret compartment that has a bat suit in it. Which is just a fun, lovely little nod to the Adam West Batman series. But then we get this great shot of Superman sort of flying in on the water. It's sort of this far out, sort of wide shot of the bridge, and then Superman sort of flies in from behind the camera, and we see him sort of zoom towards it. And that whole sequence as he's lifting the bridge from underneath and using his heat vision. I'm always a big fan of seeing Superman problem solve. I think we talked about that a little bit in our regular Superman reviews this month. But anything where he's not just punching a thing or lifting a thing, but he's sort of lifting it a certain way and then using his heat vision to kind of repair the steel girders and then that sort of getting complicated when Superboy comes sort of slamming down onto the bridge. That's a really fun sequence, and I think they do a fun job with both Superman and Superboy in that sequence.
Yeah, it's a great way to kick off the episode too. Action right away. You don't have to wait. There's not a lot of dialogue that happens. It's just careening bus. Superman arrives. Bruce Wayne doesn't even say anything. He just flips the Shakespeare bust open, looks out the window. Superman arrives. Children are screaming, buses are careening, brakes are slamming. It's great. There's a lot to be said there. I think that shot of Superman also kind of holding the bridge, as you said, repairing the girder. Love that. It's straight out of a comic book panel in my mind. It was just a great shot there. Superboy landing sort of in a very heroic superhero land, also thumping, and Superman sort of being irritated about it. And then, as we mentioned, Superboy sort of struggling to lift the bus back up onto the the bridge, and then Superman sort of just casually lifting it from the other side and up and over Superboy was a great way to wrap that little sequence up. But right off the bat, coming out of the gate hot with some great visuals. I think the next scene that kind of stood out is back in the Young Justice headquarters, and as we said, Black Canary sort of doing some training, and there's these digital elements that sort of interact all around them, super futuristic looking, holographic. They have an air hockey table, a holographic air hockey table, and then each time that Black Canary sort of upends our young heroes, there's a interaction with the floor that circles around them and says failed on it. I thought that was pretty good. But that whole scene, some good hand-to-hand combat, some Eastern animation influence too, with sort of shots of Superboy running directly at the screen, almost sort of coming right at you with his anger and fists, kind of giving you that perspective of him coming right at you. I love those type of shots, and those are certainly very, very, very heavily influenced by that Eastern animation style.
Yeah, 100%. That's definitely a lot of that influence in there, and I think even in the character designs, especially when I think they're all like little leather motorcycle suits.
It was great.
That's really cool and really unique. They have a few different unique costumes throughout the series, both their civilian gear and like they have different covert outfits that they wear throughout the series. I like that variation because again, they've sort of established that this team is not a front public facing team. They are on covert missions. So, and you're trying not to draw attention to the fact that this is the parts from the robot that almost killed the Justice League. So you wouldn't want Robin and Kid Flash and other sort of publicly known superheroes just out there floating or driving next to the car. So I like that. And yeah, they all have sort of individual color schemes that sort of represent their characters. I love that. The sequence as they're fighting the monkeys. One of the best parts, I think, is Miss Martian kind of starts to get overwhelmed at one point by the overwhelmed. See, now I'm doing it. But she starts to get overwhelmed by the monkeys and sort of in her shape changing to fight them off. She just grows like 6 or 7 extra arms all over her body to punch them, and then she goes to one is sort of landed on the windshield of the truck, and she goes to get rid of it, and then the driver of the truck sees this green girl floating with 8 arms, including one like shooting out of her head, and he screams and then she screams back. It's a really fun sequence. That whole sequence where we're cutting back between Robin and Superboy going after the one truck and the other 3 going after the other is quite a bit of fun.
Yeah, that whole sequence is fun. I like how they split them up. This is the most, as you said, that you get from both Miss Martian and Aqualad as well. You kind of his what do you call those like water telekinetic weapons that he has? I don't know what those are called, but he pulls it out of the bike's handles and it sort of turns into those whip things that he carries, which are those lash things. Pretty cool. The monkeys themselves, I think, are the sounds I could have done without, because that's the most annoying part of the episode, no doubt. But the fact that there are robotic flying monkeys attacking and attempting to destroy the Young Justice and capture these parts of Amazo, I think they're unique looking. They're kind of terrifying when you think about it, and sort of. I'm sure a direct homage to the flying monkeys of the Wizard of Oz. They come out of a cornfield, and that's where most people get their inexplicable fear of primates comes from. You hear that a lot. They were the terrifying flying monkeys from the Wizard of Oz movie back in the day. So certainly, I'm sure not an accident there. And then, of course, I think Amazo himself is certainly a worth noting. There's the scene where we first see Amazo presented, although we did get some brief footage of him fighting the Justice League. But as Superboy confronts Ivo in the train and catches up with him, Ivo has assembled Amazo at that point, and Amazo is just sort of standing in the shadows behind Ivo. You can see his red eyes glow, and then he walks out of the shadows, and certainly resembles, if you're most familiar with his appearances in standard comic continuity, definitely more one-to-one with that. The pink skin and the pointed ears and the black pupils and the sort of reddish hair going over the top of the head and the green pants, much more akin to his original design than we're used to probably for the DCAU, Liam.
Yeah, for sure. It's a pretty dramatic difference from the DCAU counterpart, certainly, but very much in line with sort of classic Amazo from the comics. The green pants and sort of wrist guards and the pointed ears and the orange hair and everything. That's all pretty much straight off of a comic page, sort of just translated, tweaked a little bit for this series. But yeah, it's that's a pretty fun final beat there. As you mentioned, it's very dramatic, and it feels very much, it feels like this is going to go really badly for Superboy. And as you said, they don't really shy away from showing just how much he's kind of getting kicked around until the other members of the team are able to show up at the school at the end. But even that final sequence, as you mentioned, is he's sort of accessing the individual powers. We see him use Captain Atom's power. We see him use a lot of Superman, a lot of the Flash. We see him use Black Canary's scream at one point, as well as Martian Manhunter's phasing ability, which, of course, as we mentioned, is kind of his untimely undoing there, as he is trying to basically use Martian Manhunter's power and Superman's powers at the same time, and that sort of causes him to retake solid form while Superboy's fist is going through his head, and that kind of leaves us to the end of the episode, as we mentioned. But yeah, that has this episode has, I think, all around those three nice action beats. Like we said, the first one on the bridge, the truck or car chase, motorcycle chase, whatever, in the middle, and then that final sort of more traditional superhero supervillain fight with the three members, Robin, Kid Flash, and Superboy, fighting Amazo at the end. All around, I think there's some really cool and fun moments in this episode, and I actually gave visuals and animation a 9 out of 10.
Nice. I gave it the exact same score. Wouldn't you know? 9 out of 10. I think it's pretty close to perfect, as we both gave it that 9 out of 10. It's really strong. Those visualizations, I think, of those powers from Amazo are done really well. I think some of the settings are really great too. I think having a scene, as we said, that classic crumbling bridge scene that's just at this point in pretty much every superhero movie or comic book, most likely your favorite hero has likely encountered that character developing trope at least once in his superhero career. Anybody who's anybody has. And then but then also, you have the chase scene, you have multiple chases going on in opposite directions, but similarities between them because they're the same type of trucks. And then you have the setting of Superboy fighting Amazo on the moving train, and then ultimately sort of bringing it home to this, hey, it's the Young Justice, let's have them fight in a school gymnasium. Why the heck not? Seems very fitting for the Young Justice team for that to take place. A very CW-esque locale for your teen superheroes to fight off the big bad. So I think there's a lot to enjoy as far as the animation style, a lot of the visuals, a lot of the ways that this was storyboarded, and some of the animation. I think it's done really, really well. So not a surprise that we both gave it a strong score.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to our next category, Liam, which is going to be music for this week's episode. And as we have talked about in the past, sometimes hard to rate music, especially when we look at the way that it sort of was used in some of the DCAU shows versus how it's generally used in a lot of animation, especially when you're comparing it to the original Batman animated series, where it was like a character in and of itself. And then you kind of flash forward to nowadays, and and there's a little bit less emphasis sort of placed on the soundtrack in a lot of ways. So curious about your thoughts on music this week.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with the soundtrack. Of course, as mentioned, it's the Dynamic Music Partners who, those three are some of the best in the business, if not the best when it comes to scoring anything, but especially these superhero cartoons. And I had trouble finding things to say about the music. Not that there was anything wrong with it. Music in the opening scene with the bridge collapsing, you got the sort of nice dramatic strings as the bus is teetering, and then sort of more heroic music as Superman arrives, and then Superboy as well, and a little bit of that dramatic, more dramatic music as Superman's sort of flying away, and then I don't believe there was much music as far as when they're in the cave or the mountain. And so that there's kind of a big sections of the episode where they kind of let the music lay out and kind of let the dialogue carry it. But yeah, I like the music for the action beat. I think maybe the best music in the episode might come during that the motorcycle chase though.
Yeah, that seemed to be that, and there's a little bit I think played in the Amazo on the train scene, but a lot of it is just background synth. It's a little bit I don't want to say dumbed down, but it's not as prominent as it is in some of the DCAU shows, and that was the choice of the directors of the episode. And I don't think it's a commentary, as we said. The Dynamic Music Partners are the triune, the trinity these days that you look to, especially when it comes to DC animated projects and scoring them, and they have a lot of phenomenal credits to their names. So it's certainly not a reflection on them or their talent. I think it's just perhaps what this show, or specifically this episode of this show, called for, and that was a lot of verbal drama, a lot of some of the action scenes relying more heavily on the actual fisticuffs and what's happening on the screen versus what's going on in the background not being quite as prominent. So yeah, I don't think it's a slight. There was nothing that was painful. There was nothing that was offensive, nothing that detracted from what was going on in front of you. But a lot of it is just sort of layering synth on top of synth, and just kind of an afterthought almost when it comes to what's actually happening on the screen. I even watched the episode a second time, just trying to listen to figure out if there were parts that I missed that I could talk about as far as the music is concerned. And other than the action beats and just some general drums and synth in the background, there wasn't a whole lot that stood out. You do get a little bit of the Young Justice theme as they kind of discover that the monkeys are taking the parts towards Gotham City. The Young Justice theme, you kind of hear that as Robin comes to the conclusion, and a little bit at the end as they team up to finally defeat Amazo. But it's just sort of in the background a little bit. It's not very prominent. So I think it's, again, we're not commenting on this being bad. It's not bad. It's just not. It wasn't as used as much as we're used to, I would say, or it certainly, it's not as noticeable. So for those reasons, I think it's just okay. And I went with a 5 out of 10.
Yeah. And wouldn't you know it, I went with the exact same score, 5 out of 10. Again, I think it's solid, doesn't do anything wrong. But it doesn't really feel like it's given the chance. And again, like we said, it's a very plot driven, and as we'll talk about in a moment, voice actor driven episodes. Perhaps, at being the professionals and veterans that they are, they just felt that they needed to sort of lay out a little bit more and let the story beats speak for themselves. But yeah, as it stands, nothing wrong with it, but nothing really to write home about either.
All right, let's move on to our final category for this week, Liam, which is going to be voice acting. Now, again, we have talked about the voice cast for this week before, but it's a rather large one, and we'll revisit some of these voice actors for a quick review for those who have not checked out that original episode or aren't familiar. But let's talk about who our voice actors are this week with our voice acting.
That's right. So I'll do some of our guest stars first, and then work our way through our main team here. But yes, we have Peter McNichol as Ivo and Amazo and the Monkeys, I should add. All of those being done by a very talented voice actor, but he's also done a lot of regular live action work as well. He was on Veep, as well as Ally McBeal, but also did voices on other DC cartoons. He was Kirk Langstrom on The Batman, and did actually voices Kronos, the Time Thief, in a couple episodes of Justice League Unlimited that we have yet to cover. So but prolific actor all the way around. He's pretty solid there. It is a recognizable voice. He also does I think he voices Mad Hatter in the Arkham games. So like it was a very recognizable voice to me. Not that that's a bad thing necessarily. I think he's very good at playing that sort of weird, creepy doctor character that he's playing, and the mad scientist. And like I said, I had quite a bit of fun as he explained that he like painstakingly worked on figuring out an acronym so that he could call these things monkeys.
Yeah, he's funny. He has that diabolical sort of edge to his voice. Certainly, he's got a few screws in his head loose for sure. So mad scientist that's creating these different creations is one thing, but a self-aware mad scientist is another level of comedy. So in an episode that seemed to almost take itself a little bit too seriously, with the exception of maybe some quips from Kid Flash that leave you a little bit uncomfortable in this day and age. I think that it was much needed and appreciated, at least in this case, and in Ivo's performance. So well done for him.
Agreed. We also have Vanessa Marshall as Black Canary, who folks might know. She's actually voiced Wonder Woman in quite a few projects, including the Red Sun movie, which we talked about last year, as well as Crisis on Two Earths and a few other movies and animated series. She also did voices on shows like Spectacular Spider-Man and the various CGI Star Wars shows. So pretty prolific voice actor. And I think it's interesting, and I think it actually works to have Black Canary, whose character, right, her character is that she has a sonic scream, but she herself is very soft-spoken. Like, I kind of liked that dichotomy there. It's not really something I had thought about before, but I appreciated that in her performance.
Yeah, I like that. I appreciate that. It's something I didn't kind of put two and two together, but yeah, an understated voice for a person. Yeah, I like that. Her performance is fine. I think looking at it with that perspective is important, because otherwise it just kind of would remind you of somebody who's disinterested, or that is maybe just reading their lines in a way. But thinking of it that way, yeah, I think if that's the case, if that was intentional, I think that makes a lot of sense then.
That's right. And yes, then we get into our main players. We have Bruce Greenwood as Batman, who, as we've mentioned before, did voice the character in quite a few different movies and cartoons, doing the voice in all of the DC animated movie universe, the Tuckerverse films, as well as here on Young Justice, and does a solid job as Batman. Again, not much to do, but he does get a little bit more to do than maybe we saw in the other episode of Young Justice we reviewed, because he gets to have those scenes with Nolan North, who is pulling double duty as both Superboy and Superman. So he both gets to have scenes throughout the episode, sort of trying to reason with Superman and get him to take a sort of a bigger interest in Superboy's life, and then has a little bit at the end there with Superboy, as well, as he's kind of trying to get him to keep his spirits up about sort of establishing this friendship with Superman.
Yeah, I don't honestly love either of their performances as the Dark Knight or the Man of Steel. It's just not. It's hard. We've talked about this before. When you're listening to people who are playing these characters, and you're so used to Kevin Conroy and either Tim Daly or George Newbern, it's so hard to hear anybody else as those characters. And not that we're not willing to give people the chance, because certainly we've heard other people and accepted them and appreciated people's different takes on the characters. But these just feel, for whatever reason, and maybe some of it is the the delivery or maybe the direction and how they delivered their lines, but it just feels like they're very disinterested characters, which also I feel like leads to their unlikability at times as far as characters are concerned. It's very layered for me as to why these characters seem so unlikable. But yeah, I think the performance is fine. This is probably a little bit better than maybe some of the other performances. He has to show Batman Screenwood has to show a little bit of emotion in this. As he sort of, he's sort of giving Clark the business and teasing him, and Clark's not having it, not interested. So there's a little bit of emotion there, but the rest of it, he's sort of just kind of plainly reading or recapping what's happened to the Justice League, or giving the Young Justice sort of an attaboy at the end. So it's not my favorite performance, and Superman is not my favorite Superman either.
Well, yeah. So as mentioned, you have Nolan North, who is that's the main character in the Uncharted video games. He's like the video game voice actor. If you have played a video game besides like Madden in the last 25 years, you've probably heard Nolan North's voice. He is incredibly prolific, can do a lot of different voices, voices the Penguin in the Arkham games, voices some really kind of a creepy, really sinister character in The Last of Us. Like, he's a tremendous actor. That being said, I think they were trying to go for it. It makes sense that Superboy's voice actor would also voice Superman, but like weirdly to me, Superboy has like a deeper voice than Superman does.
Yeah,
and you would think it would be the opposite with Superman being older, obviously. And I know part of that is like he's just supposed to sound like gruff and angry and emo or whatever. But you would think generally when you have an adult man portraying a teenager, they're pitching their voices up to to sound younger. And instead, Superboy does not sound like a teenager. Superboy sounds like an adult man in his 40s who maybe has had a light smoking habit. Like it's very gruff and angry. And again, it's like I think he gets to do a little bit more towards the end there, is when he's sort of being fake angry to sort of draw Amazo's attention. He gets to sort of yell and scream and be a little bit more over the top and do a little bit more. But throughout most of this episode, I was like, yeah, like I appreciate that he's doing different voices for Superman and Superboy, but it just struck me. It's like, I kind of feel like those voices should be reversed. Like it almost feels like Superman should be the gruffer, more seasoned, deeper, more reserved voice. And Superboy should maybe be the little bit higher pitched, a little bit more emotional, but it is only one episode, and we'll hopefully get to see more episodes where he plays both characters, and we get to see how those variations play out. But yeah, in this episode, it didn't quite work for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. Anybody else notable as far as the voice cast is concerned?
Yeah, we have, surrounding out our main Young Justice cast, we have Danica McKellar as Miss Martian, who does a solid job. Like I said, she and Kari Payton as Aqualad don't get much to do. They sort of just have a little bit of expositional dialogue. Kari Payton has some, when they're sort of discussing Professor Ivo and then later on in the episode near the end, but he doesn't get much to do. And then Danica McKellar as Miss Martian gets a little bit to do because they're sort of in the early stages of setting up this Superboy Miss Martian romance, and it's clear that she cares for him and that she wants to get closer to him, and he's kind of keeping her at arm's length. But we don't really get to see much of that in this episode, so that they're sort of kept on the sidelines. Jason Spizak as Kid Flash, and teen pop idol of the early 2000s Jesse McCartney as Robin. They get a little bit more to do. Like I said, I do not like Robin in this series. His voice actor does not help. Again, it's okay if you like it. I'm fine. Tweet me at DCAU Review or comment on our Instagram at DCAU Review and tell me how wrong I am. I welcome it. but it does not really work for me, at least in this episode. And so yeah, the only other I guess I did forget to mention that in a small guest role we do have the another veteran voice actor in Kevin Michael Richardson playing Martian Manhunter briefly. But yeah, as far as our main cast, it really is heavily leaned on Nolan North's Superboy and to a lesser extent his Superman. So it was really hard because again, I understand he's doing what's asked of him, and I know that Nolan North is a good voice actor, but I kind of settled on a 6 out of 10 for voice acting because like I think nobody's doing like an awful job, but nobody's really wowing me. And like I said, that weird thing about the Superman and Superboy voices when they're talking to each other really kind of caught me off guard, and I feel like threw me off for a lot of the episode.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's fair, and I agree with you 100% because I also gave it a 6 out of 10 for my score at all. I mean, as well. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting that one or two voices can throw things off. I don't think that anybody is particularly bad. It's not, well, I guess maybe you think Jesse McCartney is bad, but it's not, it's not, I don't think anybody in particular is bad. It's just there's a lot of subpar performances, and I think that sort of throws things off for me, and it just leads to feeling like a lot of these characters are disinterested, or the stakes are not as high as they should be, or it's just a weird dynamic that leads the characters to almost be wooden in certain scenes. So which is hard to say when you have so much great action, as we've said with the visuals here, but that's why we break these down into different categories and rate them on our thoughts on each individual one there. So I guess that's why. So let's talk about our final scores, Liam, I guess at this point. And totaling everything up here, I end up with a score of 27 out of 40. What about you?
And viewers or listeners will notice we had the same score in all but one category, and so I arrive at a final score of just 1 point lower at a 26 out of 40.
All right, so these Elseworlds episodes are harder to do when we talk about rewatchability, because these aren't the episodes that we typically watch on repeat and over and over and over again. So almost a recommendability, I think, for this episode. Do we recommend, if you're dabbling in the Young Justice lore here, obviously we picked this episode because it does deal with the Superman Superboy dynamic. We're in a month of Superman reviews, so it directly connects with that. So it does, as we've established, provide some context for their relationship throughout this series. But I assume, one would assume that Amazo may or may not make a return at some point. Dr. Ivo escapes at the end, so we don't know what's happened to him. There's certain elements that we alluded to also that are sort of given a little foreshadowing here, not only with Superboy and Superman's relationship, but the mysterious arrow that's left at the scene with Amazo. So where do you land on this, Liam, having seen a little bit more of this than I have, as far as recommending watching this or rewatching this as a part of a pivotal episode in this series?
I would say, yeah, I think you do. I think it does provide you some building blocks for stuff that happens later in the season and in the series, as far as Superboy's quest to both to on the personal level connect with Superman, but also his wanting to sort of gain more power, and that sort of becomes a theme later in the series as well. Because as we've established, he doesn't really have the full power set yet, and so yeah, I think there are stuff that are, like we said, kind of building blocks here, and this is obviously the first episode that introduces Canary. You have the tease of spoiler alert, it's the introduction of Artemis coming in the next episode or two there. So I do think there is enough here that it is worth watching. And I think, whereas, and that's one of the reasons, as you said, that we break it down in 4 separate categories, is because while the rest of it was maybe okay or middle of the road, not, okay, good, not great, The visuals of this episode are quite spectacular, and so I think because there are some sort of story building blocks for stuff later in the series, and some fun action, I give this a 1 thumb up, even though if you listen to this review, at least with the bookended voice acting and story chat, you might think we didn't like it that much, but I would give it at least 1 thumb up for rewatchability. It feels like it has some it's sort of an important pivoting moment for some of the characters here.
Yeah, I think that's a fair argument. And believe it or not, I'm surprisingly, shockingly not going to disagree with you. I think that a 1 thumb up recommendation for this makes sense. I think, again, I'm coming from the unique perspective of not having seen these before. I think if I'm trying to understand the dynamic between Superman and Superboy and how it plays out, and knowing the Superboy character and they're all sort of the main character, but he's certainly a main focus thus far of the episodes that we've watched. Mm-hmm. So it seems like his story arc is going to be a pretty pivotal one going forward, and how he sort of fits into this Young Justice team dynamic when he's sort of a loner outsider that can't connect with anybody in the team, and his desire to connect with this one person is sort of what drives his frustration and his sort of stubbornness. So yeah, I think this is a pivotal point to kind of understand some of this, and it begins to sort of peel back the layer on Superman's whole role in this and why he's reluctant to interact with and sort of acknowledge Superboy. And it humanizes Batman in a way, because you have Batman sort of going, Batman is and Superman sort of have swapped roles for this. Usually it's Superman who, has a heart and for people, and is sort of appealing to Batman to sort of look at the humanness of what his, the consequences of his decisions are. And in this, it's sort of the opposite. Batman is trying to appeal to Superman's humanity. And so it's interesting that we have a different role. I don't know that it makes the characters likable, but it's certainly an interesting dynamic, and one that if they continue to sort of pull on those threads throughout the series are going to be pivotal to understand. So yeah, I guess it's a long way around of saying, yeah, I agree with you.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I think we had, like we said, it wasn't necessarily a home run in every category this week, but I like visiting this series, and as you mentioned, Cal, it's a series of all of the ones that we've reviewed more than one episode of, whether it be The Batman, Brave and the Bold, this is the one I definitely have the least sort of personal memory or affinity for. I think I've watched most of it through one time, but I don't generally have a lot of nostalgia for it. So it is kind of fun to revisit something, especially as you mentioned, something that quite a lot of people hold very dearly. So it's fun kind of examining that in that light.
Agreed. Well, that begins to wrap things up here, Liam. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this week's episode. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media at DCAU Review. As Liam said, we love continuing the conversation throughout the week, talking about both this, Young Justice. Let's talk DCAU. Let's talk about DCAU comics. Let's talk about DC continuity. Let's talk about DC movies. We got it all over there. Join the conversation at DCAU Review on Twitter. You can also follow us on our Instagram page, ever growing, ever popular, growing larger and larger every day. Check us out at DCAU Review as well. We post some exciting stuff throughout the week, some unique things, including some tie-in comics and things that maybe you've never seen before, plus some clips from our upcoming episodes. So not going to want to miss that. Also, don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app. If you subscribe to us and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review, give us a little blurb, let people know what you like about listening to us. That helps us a lot. It lets other people find us a little bit more easily. So it helps us spread the word out there. Don't forget, if you also If you listen to your podcasts on YouTube, you have that option of checking us out every week on YouTube. Saturday mornings, we typically post our episodes right there on the Pod Tower. And if you want to support us in some way and can't do financially by buying a shirt or a hat or a mug off of our store at DCAUreview.com, head over to YouTube. And I'm sure you already have a YouTube account. Just subscribe to the Pod Tower. Search Pod Tower in the search bar. When it comes up, just hit subscribe. That'll help us out. And not only helps us out, Liam, it helps out our friends over at Tim Talk and the Watchtower database friends as well. They all have content on that beautiful Pod Tower YouTube page. And we're looking to continue to grow those subscribers there as well.
And I will just mention, it was a little bit of an arduous journey. The new episodes have been going up on that channel since January. Took a little bit longer to get the back catalog up. That was sort of a collaborative effort between myself and James from the Watchtower database. But now officially, you can go back every single episode of the show we've ever done. Regular episodes and bonus episodes are all available on the Pod Tower YouTube channel, and they are available in a lovely curated playlist. You can start with the episode trailer, episode 0, and go all the way through to present day on there. Every episode now available on the Pod Tower.
Hard work from both you gentlemen. Kudos to both of you for getting that done. That was no easy process, but hey, we're in the late 20th century at this point, I believe, with our video or our podcast up on YouTube. So right to us for joining everybody 15 years late. So way to go. All right, Liam. Well, with that being said, that will bring us to the end of this month of Superman reviews. As we said, we have not many Superman the Animated Series episodes that we have not reviewed, so it may be a bit before we return to the sunny skies of Metropolis to review full Superman months, if we do dare do so again. So we'll figure out sprinkling some in maybe collaborative months. We also alluded to it last week, but we have something on the horizon we're working on to sort of continue keeping Superman episodes in the conversation, which you may get a taste of at the end of this very upcoming month. But Liam, as we turn the page, we are actually changing shows as we tend to do at the beginning of each new month. And that means I believe it's time we return to the future.
The future, Cal.
That's right, Liam. All the way to the year 2000 and something, 30 years from now, whenever 30 years from now is, whenever now is. That's right, Liam. We're headed back to the future. That's right. Batman Beyond is on the horizon and will be here next week. We are doing a month of Batman Beyond reviews, beginning with the next episode in the rotation. As you recall, all of our Batman episodes we do in sequential order. So that means we're coming up here on the next Batman Beyond episode, which is...
Cal, we have a legendary episode to talk about next week, and we have quite a few bit heavy hitters in our month of Batman Beyond reviews coming up. And we are kicking it off next week with the Emmy Award winning The Egg Baby.
Oh, baby. Somebody better tell the Watchtower database, because one of their favorite episodes of all time, and certainly an Emmy Award-winning episode, will be the judge of that, I think. Well,
right.
I guess.
Well, I mean, factually, it did win the Emmy, but yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm eagerly anticipating. Batman Beyond has done humor pretty well thus far, so we'll have to see if we appreciate it this many years later. But I am certainly looking forward to returning to the future with you, Liam. And we'll do that next week. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
We'll talk to you on the very next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.